Well, with us now are John Dalhuisen, he's Amnesty International's Director for Europe and Central Asia, and Jason Pack, who's a researcher into Middle Eastern history at Cambridge University and president of the LibyaAnalysis.com, a government consultancy on Libyan policy. Welcome to you both. John, first of all, one gets the sense that everyone is horrified about this, yet there is not the political will to stop it happening at the moment.
Well, we've seen the beginning of a change of that this afternoon with the announcement from Mogherini that we just saw after the meeting of foreign ministers in Luxembourg. I think the horror has reached such a significant scale after months of denial and obfuscation that it's got to the point where the EU and national leaders realise they have to do something. And the commitments that are coming out of Luxembourg today are at least going in the right direction. More search and rescue assets, operating closer to Libyan shores with more funding. Will national state governments follow up with the necessary assets and commitments themselves? That's what we'll have to see in the coming
And what
weeks.
is happening to the 400,000 or so people who have made it now, we understand, across the Mediterranean?
Well, they're being the 400,000 that have made it
from Africa into...
Well, that's over quite a large period of time,
sure.
Obviously. I mean, of the thousands that have entered in the last few weeks, they're in reception centres distributed mostly around Italy. What will happen to them? It will depend very much on their situation. The refugees, the bona fide asylum seekers, one hopes, will get access to asylum quickly. Others will be sent back. Others will not be sent back because of obstacles to doing that.
Jason, do you see the problem as being fundamentally in North Africa and indeed sub-Saharan Africa?
Yes, I'm afraid that the European policy response will be fundamentally one of treating the symptom rather than treating the cause. Yes, there are all these migrants who are facing humanitarian catastrophes and crossing the Med. But the issue is that we have a civil war in Libya that the EU and Western countries have focused on...
Well, and contributed to.
I don't believe contributed to, but have focused on treating the symptoms rather than having a plan B for the fact that Bernardino Leon's mediation mission is not the only approach. And the fact is, the longer the war continues, the more that each militia needs to gain assets from smuggling heroin, smuggling subsidized petrol, and of course, smuggling migrants, who are a huge source of cash, particularly for the Misratan militias, but also for Zintan and other militias. And we need to see this tragedy and go to the root cause, which is the Libyan civil war, and invest political as well as monetary assets to treating that root cause, and then there won't be a need to deal with this issue.
I mean, the problem, as I understand it, is that no one can really operate in Libya or along the Libyan coast at the moment because of the state of hostilities there.
Well, it's manifestly the case that the Libyan authorities, such as there are totally incapable of offering any kind of search and rescue services in their own search and rescue zone. I think more broadly, there's obviously a complete impossibility of any kind of meaningful cooperation with any authority that there is there now. But I mean, I would point to the fact that the push factors driving migrants to take this route are not limited to Libya alone. There are Syrian refugees who are fed up in refugee camps closer to Syria. There are sub-Saharan migrants who are coming, not necessarily refugees, though many of them may well be, that are also continuing to come. So the push factors are not limited to the chaos in Libya, though they are certainly being aggravated by it.
Is it possible to have some kind of naval operation at either end, either a rescue operation at this end, or indeed a naval operation along the coast of North Africa to prevent people leaving?
I'm of the believer that there is no sovereignty in Libya at present, and we're dealing with a country that is terra nullius. Neither the Tobruk government nor the Tripoli government can really be said to be the Libyan
So in
government.
that case, it wouldn't be possible to deploy a naval force?
No, I look at the exact opposite. I'm sorry. It means that naval assets which embargo the country and make it impossible to transact any sort of business are well within the interpretation of the UN Resolution 2174 and could be things that we could angle for, and they could deal with both things like oil smuggling as well as the migrant issue. But it takes an international consensus between Britain, Italy, France, and other allies.
Well, that's why the European Union's meeting, presumably.
Right, but they're treating the symptom and not the cause, because we need to link anything that we're doing about the migrant issue to creating incentives and disincentives for Tobruk and Tripoli so that they're going to want to make a deal, and cutting them off from the shipments of furniture and used cars that they need to enjoy themselves and fund the civil war would be the first step towards treating this problem.
Think that would help?
I dare say would, but I think there are two things. I mean, there is a fire burning in Libya, that is for sure. But whilst you're waiting to put out the fire, you can't ignore the people jumping out of the window. And I think that is the point with search and rescue services in the central Mediterranean. And it is possible, and I hope it will now be the case, that the EU and its member states can deploy meaningful search and rescue assets much closer to the Libyan territorial waters, where they're currently drowning in record numbers.
I mean, you seemed a bit taken aback when I quoted that figure of 400,000. That was what a MEP was quoting me today as the number of people that she thought would be coming in this year. And the ministers' meeting today have talked about repatriating those people or sending them back to Africa somehow quickly. Do you think that's possible?
Well, I mean, politicians always talk about sending back. I mean, the question is who you're sending back and then how possible it is to do it.
And where you're sending them back to.
The bona fide asylum seeker, in fact, the very significant number of those making this journey shouldn't be sent back at all. They're those who have had an asylum claim looked at and rejected, with all the necessary guarantees, can be sent back.
What do you think can be done about this immediate crisis of people coming across in unseaworthy boats and drowning?
We don't have a plan B. As a Western community, we've put everything into Bernardino Leon, the UN Special Envoy's mission to mediate between Tobruk and Tripoli, and yet we have nothing to do if the negotiations fail. We absolutely need to box Egypt out on the one side and Qatar and Turkey on the other, and de-escalate the Libyan civil war by preventing the flow of armaments and monies that drive it. The reason in which these migrants are going in record numbers to cross the Med is because the different militias smuggle heroin, migrants, and opium equally. And therefore they use that to gain money to fight the civil war. If we could treat the civil war, we would have far less migrant issues.
Okay, thank you both very much indeed.